Crime Lord in the immediate vicinity, David Bradley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to BritCon 2021, the virtual edition. I'm Ken Deep. I'm the showrunner of the Long Island Doctor Who convention, LI Who, and I'm very honored today to be speaking with Mr. David Bradley. You know him from Harry Potter, Doctor Who. The list goes on and on. Welcome, David, to the virtual BritCon 2021.
Thank you very much. Nice to be
first,
here.
How is the quarantine holding up, and what is it like working in these changing times?
Well, it was easy in some respects in terms of the voiceover work for the animated films that I've been involved with, particularly Pinocchio and one or two others, and Troll Hunters, because I could be in a booth anywhere on my own, speaking transatlantically, and there was no need for any desperate measures because there was no physical contact with anyone. So it was no change in that respect. But of course, with filming, we had lots of people checking you and all the other actors, and you had to rehearse with masks on or plastic visors, and it could have ended up with the work looking very impersonal, but the way they worked around it, I thought they did miracles really, because a lot of the interaction, you couldn't get that close to the other actors, but somehow it's been amazing that they're up and running. And I've done the film I'm doing at the moment, and the one I did before with Lena Dunham, it had its own problems. If someone had been in contact and went positive, we just had to self-isolate for a while and then come back to it a few days later. So what as an actor you do miss is being in the bar in the hotel afterwards, enjoying the social side of it, and just the simple act of shaking hands or with someone a hug, even though it's someone you worked with years ago and haven't seen them for 20 years, and you just want to say, "Oh, how are you?" And lovely to see you again. But it became different, and so I'm glad all that's starting to change now. Now that we're all being jabbed and tested, but there's an awful lot of testing goes on, and they have to make everything absolutely secure and safe. So it hasn't been that easy, but not for those of us who remember it as it was before. But yeah.
Well, it's certainly been a challenge for everyone. One of the things about drama that I've come to understand is that it's like escaping to someone else's problems. So much of getting back to working, especially in the entertainment field, in movies and television and audio dramas as well, is for people to kind of escape from some of the things that we're dealing with. So I suppose it's important to be back at work and putting together some things and help people forget their COVID worries.
That's right, and of course they found it easier to make it work on screen, but of course for theatre work it's been virtually impossible, because if you haven't got an audience. And actually last Christmas I did a one-man version of A Christmas Carol at a little theatre in Gloucestershire, but of course we could only have a half full theatre, if that, and the audience wearing masks, and so you couldn't see their faces, how they were responding. You just didn't know. You heard laughter, but you couldn't tell who it was from, or you couldn't see smiles. So it was a strange experience, and it's been really sad for a lot of theatres, many of whom will probably have gone to the wall since the lockdown, and it's going to take a long time for that part of the industry to recover, sadly.
Yeah, I think the live experience, whether it's in theater or in live music venues, things like that, have been struggling.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to the start of your career and talk about the transition from theater and into film and television, and basically what you started?
Well, I came into the business, I suppose, to be a theatre actor. When I was at drama school, I mean, a lot of my heroes were theatre actors, because we our principal, Hugh Crockwell, was married to Geraldine McEwen, the great actress, and so he would get us tickets to go to the Old Vic to see the National Theatre. And it was during their golden age, and it was run by Laurence Olivier, and the company was Maggie Smith, Robert Stevens, Derek Jacobi, Albert Finney, Ian McKellen, Anthony Hopkins, and all sorts of amazing people who, of course, and Michael Gambon was a spear carrier, and so I like my friends, we just wanted to be theatre actors, and we never thought, maybe get into movies, even though I love the movies. It wasn't something I saw myself doing, and it wasn't after years with the RSC, and fortunately for me, I got to work with Olivier's company about 6 years after I left, rather, and became part of his company. And for me, that was what it was all about. And until I got a proper break on a TV series called Our Friends in the North in the early 1994, 95, something like that.
Yep.
And I think, I love doing this. It's a different discipline, and it's nice. Even though I'd done the odd little cameo, the odd one-liner, I hadn't felt at home in a film studio, because the theatre was my world, with the camaraderie and working in a big company. That was the best thing about it, because you did everything together, and you went on tour together, and your social life was mixed up with theirs. And whereas with TV, often you meet lots of great people, but there's so many more people involved in the process. Well, whether it's sound people, costume people, lighting people, electricians, and there's so many more departments on the film set. You just turn up, and you're the one who happens to be on camera, but there seem to be a lot more voices involved. Whereas once you're on a stage and you've got the show on, you own that space, and but I gradually started to get more and more screen work after Our Friends in the North, and now I do actually enjoy it just as much as which was a surprise to me, as stage work. I just love it, and as I say, it involves different disciplines. But if you're on something for long enough,
That's a similar family.
Yes, and it can be just as much a family experience as a theatre company. Yeah.
Do you have favorites of those families that you've been involved in different productions? You have things that you keep really close to your heart that you say, this was someone I really enjoyed working with, or a production that really just struck home?
Not particular production, but my first ever job was in fortnightly rep in the Sheffield Playhouse before the Sheffield Crucible was built, and it was an old, I think it'd been a Methodist hall, and there was no stage door. You had to go through the theatre, and so you met all the staff and often the audience in the bar as you walk through, and on the way out, and a lot of us lived in a big old house in Sheffield, and it was just perfect. It was just you had a different play every 2 weeks, and you had all sorts of things thrown at you, not by the audience, thank goodness, but just all these different plays, from local farces to Shakespeare, Chekhov, Pinter, Noel Coward, or whatever. And that was 2 years of a great learning experience with a great bunch of people, and there was a great spirit of generosity, because the money wasn't very good at all, but we were all grateful for the work, and to get such a good grounding for 2 years, that stays with you for life, really, and you really appreciate what it's like being part of a company. And of course, then after that, that company, the aforementioned one that Olivier was running, he was an inspiration to me, the greatest actor I've ever seen on the stage, and I could watch him every night from the wings. It was for free,
That's right.
know, and that was a great company, and we toured together. We went to Australia for 3 months with a play, and yes, and then the RSC, where I spent many years, and just working with all these different directors. And I think there was a season in '82 where we had Michael Gambon, Helen Mirren, Pete Postlethwaite, Derek Jacobi, and that was a great company. And living together in a small place like Stratford, you just saw each other all the time, and to some that may sound like a bit parochial and a bit of a nightmare, but it was such a good company with such a great bunch of people. And Alan Rickman, another one, Richard Griffiths, and of course a lot of us met up later on in Harry Potter, because we'd all started out in theatre at the same time. So it was great that so many people from that era came through and got into Potter,
Which that's a perfect transition, actually, because I'm sure so many people that are watching today are Harry Potter fans, and Harry Potter seemed to tap into something, well, quite magical, for no better way of putting it, both on the page and then on the screen. Everyone seemed to be drawn to it. I mean, the amount of talent behind that production is phenomenal. What was it? Were you familiar with the books prior to being involved in it, or was it just a thing where everyone just wanted to be a part of it?
Well, fortunately for me, I was on holiday in Italy with the family, and my kids were just reading the Philosopher's Stone, and I'd heard about these kids' books, and it didn't sound like something that I would normally read. I was into biographies and thrillers and stuff like that, but I realized the only way to get any conversation with my kids was to have a read. And so as soon as they'd finished it, I said, I'll give it here, let me see. So we could have some kind of conversation over supper afterwards. And I thought, this is good. I thought, I never thought, I didn't know they were making a film. It was, I think it was my daughter who said, get your agent, and because they're making a film. Are they? Oh, okay. And I said, what do you think I should play? Hoping they'd say Snape or someone rather suave and handsome. But they said, no, Dad, you're a Filch, you're natural Filch. Thank you very much. There he is. Who's that handsome geezer? Anyway, so I auditioned for it, and for Chris Columbus, and they called me back a few weeks later, by which time the pressure had built up, mostly from my kids, say, you've got to get this one, Dad, you really have, you know. And of course, then you realise that nearly every actor in the business wants to be in the Harry Potter films. And having read the first book and knew the scale of it and the magic of the story, and of course, then there was no indication that there would be that many books in the pipeline later on, or films. It could have easily been just a one-off film, and if the kids, who are your severest and most generous critics, but if they had given it the thumbs down, the audience, all those young people, if they'd have said, well, it was okay, but not as good as the book. But the response we got, you know, and especially the laughter, which I was so grateful for, because I just assumed I'd be just a grumpy old geezer and a hate figure for children everywhere in the world. But as soon as we went to the premiere and I heard this laughter at Filch, I thought, oh wow, this is good. This could be something, and it was very gratifying. And so it went on, and in the end, I was so glad that was the part that I'd gone for, because the whole process took a while, of course. It took more than one audition, and I had to go back again and do it all again for the producers who came over, and JK had to give it the thumbs up. She never interfered with the casting, Joe, but I think everything had to go past her for her approval. And if she thought someone was wrong for a part, I'm sure she would have said, have a rethink. But so I got the okay from her and everyone else, and we were off. And what a great ride! 10 years, my goodness. Yeah.
How do you prepare for something like that? I mean, it was good that you. It's gratifying to hear that you were a fan of the first book. You had a natural curiosity, and clearly it captured you. But now you have the part. How do you prepare for something like that? Is there a different process, or is it just using your chops, your acting chops?
Yeah, well, sometimes it's easy. You latch onto something straight away, and you think, you read the first page, and you think, I know how to do this. But with Potter, I wasn't sure how to play it, how dangerously to play it, how I just knew it had a comic energy about it for me, and it was a process of checking out how the look would be. So with the costume department, we spent a long time trying different things, and I was trying different ways of his being, his physicality and his voice, and thankfully my daughter helped me in the back garden with how to play it, but it didn't come to me very easily. But once I got the costume on, and we found something between something from the old Wild West and the medieval pickpocket and this smelly, and someone in the costume or makeup department said, what about some teeth, David? Fancy something? Oh yes. So I put these, they made these fake yellow crooked teeth, and I found the right boots. They often say, if you find the right boots, you're halfway there. And so I suddenly it came alive to me, you know. But it wasn't the easiest one I've found getting into. So, but once I did, I was away. So after the first film, it was just a question of turning up, and as soon as I got those teeth in and the hair extensions and everything, and you just feel you're there already. And I thought, well, I could improvise. After a while, you think, if they want me to improvise, and occasionally Chris Columbus or one of the directors would just say, do something, and that sometimes they would keep it in and sometimes they wouldn't, because you never knew when preparing or when you were filming. You could spend 2 weeks on a sequence that eventually wouldn't make the final cut, and because they had hundreds of hours of footage to choose from in the end, so every time you went to a premiere, you'd be praying that they'd keep one of your favorite lines there, or a favorite little bit that you did, because it could have easily just ended up on the cutting room floor. So when you saw it come up on the screen, you thought, oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I visited the Warner Brothers Studios tour that they have now just outside of London several times, and what blew me away was the scope of this production. And I'm curious, you've had such a long and varied career. Tell me about your impression about that scope. Is it the biggest thing you've ever worked on?
Well, yes, and of course, and seeing it for the first time, and looking at other actors like Alan Rickman and Maggie Smith, and that, seeing them being wow, because they'd been round the block, and a lot of the other actors, Richard Harris and then Mike Gambon, and I think we were all very impressed by the scale of the sets, and because it just felt so real. You had to use your imagination when we did the green screen. When you're looking at Harry fighting a dragon, but you can't see anything. There's just somebody waving a flag and saying, "Now the dragon's up here and Harry's up here," and and the whole crowd are in a stand, supposedly watching this amazing fight between a dragon and Harry, trying to avoid it. And all we saw was this green screen with a flag, but you had to look just as fearful, and just imagining what they would be looking at. But of course, when you're in the Great Hall, that was for real, and it looked just so impressive, and the scale of it, and quite a lot of the other scenes as well. It was a triumph of the imagination, I think, and thankfully, when the kids would come up and say, "Oh, it's just as I imagined it,"
the ultimate compliment.
I'd say yes.
Yeah. Well, they say never work with children and animals, and you did both of those in Harry Potter. Mrs. Norris, of course, and for cat lovers everywhere, myself and Dawn, the chairperson of BritCon. I mean, I'm sure your interaction with the feline species.
Yes.
Are you a cat person in general?
Yes. Well, at the time we had 4 cats in the house, and a cat knows straight away if you're a cat person.
That's right.
And I could hold. Well, there were 2, Alanis and Max and Alanis, and if one of them was asleep or needed feeding and couldn't do the scene, or they were on the phone to their agent. No, I'm kidding. They used the identical one. They had 2 identical Maine Coon cats, and they were both great, really. Max would lie in my arms all day if he was asked to do, and occasionally I just had to give him a little tap on the shoulder to the cameras were rolling because he'd fallen asleep, and to try and get them to look towards the camera, because they had to CGI the red eye in their eyes, and if they were looking just off camera to the side, they couldn't get that red-eyed look in them. So they would use various methods to get them to follow me around, which usually included the promise of food. And but they occasionally one would just. I mean, there are some outtakes of Max running up my body and sitting on my head, facing backwards with his tail hanging down, and then. And if that's there on an outtake somewhere, I'd love to see it. But and then when the cameras were rolling, sometimes they'd just get them, so they'd just do something crazy, and of course it wouldn't make the film. But and so yeah, so we were very fond of each other, and it was always a pleasure because they were easy, really. But the guy who was stand-in for me occasionally when they were lining up the shots, and he had to work with the cats, and he had my costume on, and he had a wig on, and he happened not to like cats at all, and was actually afraid of them. So he couldn't wait for me to walk on set so he could hand it over to me and say, "It's all yours, mate."
They found the wrong man for the job, I suppose.
I think so. Yeah, lovely guy, but he just didn't like cats, and the cat knew it. Yeah.
Yeah, they can certainly sense it. Well, let's skip to a different franchise, one that has been quite iconic for you. As a matter of fact, I believe it probably got you uninvited to some weddings for many, many years, and that would be Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Walder Frey made quite an impression on viewers. We talked a little bit about knowing about the Potter books prior to being cast, but tell me, were you familiar with Game of Thrones before being cast?
No, I'd never read any of that. I met George later in America when I was on a convention or promotion thing there, but I'd never read any of the books, and I haven't since, I'm afraid. I just didn't have the time, and so when I was first asked to play Walder, which is the scene where Caitlin comes and asks for permission to pass through the towers for her son, it was just a couple of days work, and I thought, oh, that's fun. That was nice, an interesting guy, and it seemed a long time later that the Red Wedding episode plopped through my door, and I thought, oh wow, this is something different, And funnily enough, with him, unlike the Filch, as soon as I read it, I just knew how to play him. I just felt, again, it was merciless and ruthless, but again, I found it quite funny, and I thought, is there something wrong with me finding this Red Wedding scene? It was just so appalling, but there was a vein of very dark humor running through it, and I responded to that, and I found it, well, not easy to play, but I didn't struggle.
Right, understood.
Yeah.
Because
being a family man myself.
Yeah. And such a nice person. It must be. They say that that you have to tap into some kind of streak inside of you that perhaps you don't like to look at. Is that or not true? I mean, is there a man who gets stuck in traffic or something that you have to tap into to get that kind of cruelty?
No, but we all have our moments, don't we? And not long before, I played the title role in Titus Andronicus at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and that is, let's say, revenge is a dish best taken cold, and I learned a lot from having played him, because he murders two of his enemies and has them put into a pie and has their mother eat the pie. And so a lot of that scene where you find the well, we'll call it finger food. When the pie turns up, I thought this is Shakespeare. This is Titus Andronicus, and it's a great play, and it was the kind of the Reservoir Dogs of its day, and so I kind of felt, and again, that scene in Titus Andronicus, it elicits laughter from the audience, and I was glad that it did because it's so horrific, and
Right.
I was glad when the Red Wedding had the response that it had, and there were some of the responses were quite vociferous and rather alarming. Wishing me all sorts of different demises. Not me, but Walder.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I thought, oh, that's great. It was one of the most pleasurable responses I've had to the Red Wedding, and it was such fun to do. Yeah.
The vitriol that came out of people towards the character, is that the equivalent to applause for you in carrying
Oh,
off?
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. It means you've
hit the
struck
mark.
a note, you've touched them,
Yeah.
and yes, yeah,
I once heard from an athlete say that when you play in the visiting arena, the boos are as good as cheers. So I imagine that must be something similar. And that
yes,
when people despise you that much after that part, that you've pulled it off.
yes. But a
Uh,
lot of it's based on fear, I think, because if if an opposing player playing at your home ground is that good and that dangerous, you think by booing them you're showing your disapproval, but for them it's music, and they
right.
think, well, they're doing that because they not
They feel
only hate
strongly.
me, but they fear me. They fear
That's
what I
right.
might do to them, so I can understand that being meat and drink to say a footballer who gets booed. Yeah.
Well, speaking of drink, you in the photos that we see of you as Walder, sometimes you have your cup in your hand. And any secrets from the Game of Thrones sets as to, are you faking it all times? Is it water? Is it something more fun?
It was pure grape juice.
Keeping you healthy, looking like wine, but
It's no, it was just great. It was just grape juice, and which is
yeah.
very nice. Not like the real thing, but that has to wait because it's a long day in the studio.
Well, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to talking about Doctor Who. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and there's several different ways to even start this. You first made an appearance on the show in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, where you once again played someone, and again, to your credit, I don't think I was ever more angry, and I've been a Doctor Who fan for close to 40 years. I don't think I've ever been more angry at a villain than in this story, and that is a true compliment to you in and the build up and the writing of we have a human interest in dinosaurs, these things that have walked our planet but we've never seen. We can only imagine them, and we
Yeah,
finally get a chance to have them back, and you just stick the dagger in our side, don't you?
yeah, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about being cast on Doctor Who for the first time. And growing up in Britain, Doctor Who must have been something that was on your radar for a long time.
Well, it was something I saw from the very beginning. I first started watching it, and Hartnell was my first Doctor, so I remembered it, and but of course, never imagining that I would be in it, let alone play. Mind you, in the first film, Adventures in Space and Time, I was playing the actor who played the Doctor, but I felt the one with Twice Upon a Time with Peter Capaldi. I felt, yeah, I'm part of the Doctor family now. I felt, yeah, and but doing Dinosaurs on the Spaceship, I can't remember how I got the role, whether I auditioned for it or not, but I think it was Chris Chibnall, and he decided, that I would be Solomon. And again, it was, it had this dark humor, and I and next to the spaceship in the studio, it wasn't seen, was the blue police box, and I thought at the time, well, this is my Doctor Who experience, and this is the nearest I will ever get to the TARDIS. Little did I know that
Right.
Mark Gatiss had other ideas, and then so it was a lovely surprise, because I thought you don't get 2 bites of the cherry with Doctor Who, but I did.
You
And
did.
yeah, having played a villain and never expecting in my wildest dreams ever to play the Doctor, particularly one as iconic as William Hartnell, who was one of the great character actors of the screen when I was growing up, and Brighton Rock, The Way Ahead, This Sporting Life, and he was in the series called The Army Game, which apparently he wasn't very happy being in anyway. But he was one of those actors, one of the great character actors that we produced, and so there was a bit of pressure playing him, because he's still got family who you've got to honour his memory, yet at the same time show him warts and all in a way. And Mark Gatiss' script I thought was just brilliant, and it showed a lot of different facets to the man, and Terry McDonough, who directed it brilliantly, and it was just one of those experiences. And I have to say, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in a film studio, because we had like 3.5 weeks to tell this story, which went through several drafts and in the process. And we were working under a tight schedule, but there was never a moment of panic and we've got to get this thing done. It was just one of those pleasurable experiences that one treasures, and I'm actually very proud of Adventures in Space and Time, because of
I think it was one of the highlights in the anniversary year. It was just fantastic to see something. If you're a fan of something like Doctor Who, we don't really get a chance to peek behind the scenes and see how the sausage is made, for a better expression, and especially that back then it wasn't the national or now global treasure it has become. So there probably wasn't a desire to keep things for posterity. So this was really a way for us to peek back at the time. And I think you can tell that it's made with love. I'm glad that you find it you found it to be such a pleasurable experience, because the audience feels that way too. I'm speaking from personal experience. When you watch it, you can tell it's made with love, and it's meant to be respectful, but at the same time not gloss over some of the challenges that they have at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
But at that time, did Mark give you any little wink or hidden nod that with this success that you would actually go from portraying William Hartnell to playing the first Doctor at some point?
No, I don't think that was even on the horizon for Mark until I've heard it was maybe Peter Capaldi who put the idea forward for his swan song as Doctor Who, and how much of it was him, I've no idea. I never found out, but I think on the last day of filming Adventure in Space and Time, Peter visited the set.
Oh, wow.
And Mark Gatiss actually dressed up as John Pertwee's Doctor even though he never appeared on camera, he was just we had a photo together. he just he's very passionate about it. Is Mark, and he when he approached me to play it in London, it was just a tap on the shoulder and said, "I'm writing this thing for the 50th anniversary. Would you?" And I just said, well, when do I start? I didn't even need to read it or talk about it or discuss it. I was just, yes. Before you change your mind, yes.
Well, it's a fantastic recreation where you add your own flourishes. What in preparing for something like that, how tough is it to blend being true to yourself with being true to a part that someone else has also portrayed?
Well, I was aware of. I was sent lots of footage of original because there was nothing of Hartnell himself, the man, but all I had really was the Doctor Who DVDs that the BBC sent me, and so all I had to do was just study his his inflections and his way of speaking, and with the hands on the lapel, and they just the way his vocal cadences were, and his physicality, and I had a bit of help from his granddaughter's book called "Who's There," about the memories of him as a child and his upbringing and his illegitimacy, which was odd because he kept repeating the phrase, "I'm a legitimate actor of the stage and screen." And he could say it with a certain air of, brooks no argument. And the odd that he had this upbringing where he was actually illegitimate when at a time when it wasn't a very good thing to be, and thankfully things have changed, but it was a kind of stigma to him, and something I think that always was always with him, and which made him occasionally difficult, brilliant, generous, in equal measure. And I was glad that Mark's script, as you say, brought out all those different facets. Not to mention his illness, which caused his occasional memory lapse or his occasional outbursts at people, but he was also, as I say, capable of much generosity and love, and but you've got to show the whole man, and for an actor, that's exactly what you want. I mean, whether it's Shakespeare or Chekhov, you see people as they are, naked in their humanity and their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities and their strengths and capacity for love, and the more of that you can show, those different colors, the more interesting it is for an actor to play these parts. And Shakespeare's full of these rich characters, and they're not always lovable or funny, but they're capable of all these different emotions and feelings. And that's the best thing for an actor. And when the writing is that good, that it shows all those different facets.
Did you hear from Jessica Carney about her grandfather after Adventure in Space and Time aired?
Yes. Well, we met, and they came onto the set. Well, her with her family, and she was, of course, in the film. She was the little girl, the granddaughter.
Yeah,
who was beautifully portrayed, and the family came to visit, and they saw the film, and they all said, "Yeah, that was Grandad. That was him." you know, and it was quite a relief, because you do feel when you're playing an actual person, well, it's not restricted, but you have to get it right, and you have to capture what that person was like, and hope that their nearest and dearest approve of the portrayal, even if it isn't always rosy.
Yeah.
And thankfully they did. And as you say, with the Twice Upon a Time, playing the actual Doctor, I could have a bit more fun and put a bit of my own spin on it, because it wasn't an original episode that had to be faithfully recreated, if you know what
Right.
I mean. So, yeah. So there was a little bit more leeway, and thankfully, due to the the generosity of Peter, and he's just great fun to have around, and he was up for us just having a bit of fun playing off each other, and yeah, that was one of the chief pleasures, because he was so welcoming, and I mean, he was the Doctor, he was the main man, and but we you know, we just, as I said, we just pinged off each other, and and ready for anything that turns up, and we just react, and we were great to work with. Such a lovely man. Yeah.
The show has such a long history, and its format allows us to explore bringing characters back like this, and so although William Hartnell isn't able to portray him anymore because he's passed, another actor can step in and keep the character alive, and just as a Doctor Who fan, I say thank you about that, because it's wonderful, because if we want to have this character back, you know, if you're willing, then we can certainly have the first Doctor visit us at any time. And you do so in the audios now for Big Finish.
Yes,
Almost
yes,
taking it in a brand new direction, a faithful recreation of the first Doctor's era, but again, doing your own thing. And so tell us a little bit about doing it for audio.
well, when I first read the script for the first one we did, I I just assumed that they'd found these old episodes, original episodes. They were so well written, and and now having done them, and I know they're written for the Big Finish alone, and every time we do one, I think, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to put a camera on this, and find the right budget for all these magical places we're going to? I'd be up for it, you know. And especially with the original cast of Adventure in Space and Time.
Which you seem
With
to have a nice chemistry with as well.
Yes, yes.
Seem to get
Again, we couldn't have done that in the time we had without that natural chemistry. And yeah, what a lovely bunch. And then what a treat when Carol Ann Ford came in the studio one day and did a bit. And I thought, wow, this is like it's like
proper.
TV history, you know. And there we are working together with someone, who's like a legend, you know.
Yeah.
And she was lovely. Yeah.
The Radio Times recently did an article about a Whovian tactile book series that you support. This struck close to home. A few people submitted questions for today's interview, and my girlfriend, being a librarian, also wanted me to mention it first. Thank you for supporting it, but can you tell us a little bit about what it means, and is this something that you feel passionate about?
Well, yes. I mean, I support the guide dogs for the blind, for example, which is in my town where I live in Leamington, and I just had a natural, very quick response to what this guy is doing, and I thought, what a wonderful wonderful act of generosity to open up the world of Who. I mean, I had no idea that Doctor Who was as worldwide as it is when I came to LA. And I thought, just thousands of fans on the west coast of America. I had no idea. And when this thing came up about the tactile books, I thought, just think of this world, of this imagination, of this wonderful stories that have become so part of our fabric, open to blind people as well, you know. And so, yeah, I give it my wholehearted support, of course. Yeah.
And you're saying are there other causes that you support? Things that you want to, perhaps mention or give your endorsement to, that people you want to draw some awareness to?
Well, many things. I mean, the Great Ormond Street Hospital for children. That's for very personal reasons, and the well, there's the Shakespeare Hospice in Stratford, of which I'm the president, and just a few little local things, that I like to be involved with. Yeah.
Well, it's been a great honor spending some time with you today and getting to talk with you. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I really appreciate you being at BritCon, the virtual edition here in 2021. Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us. And I want to also thank the Alliance agents for helping facilitate putting this together and helping BritCon all weekend put together its convention. Mr. David Bradley, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and all the very best. And thank you for all the fans for watching and appreciating what we do. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being here for BritCon 2021, the virtual edition. I want to let you know that David has autographed photos available. In addition, you can get a short video chat with David. And for information on how to purchase this, you can go to BritCon.org. My name is Ken Deep. I'll see everyone real soon. Cheers.
We acknowledge Alliance agents for assisting us in obtaining our guests.
That was great! Hello there! I'm the Doctor, President-elect of the High Council of Time Lords, Defender of the Laws of Time, Protector of Gallifrey, and Eater of Unlimited Rice Pudding, etc., etc. You're watching BritCon! Don't go away! Is it me next?